Right, guys. What I think we'll do is we'll kick off now, and we'll see how we go. Thank you, everyone, for turning out for the CPD and VR event. My name's Steve Banbury. Obviously, if a lot of you have been here before, you know who I am, you know what I do. But for those that don't, I'm head of digital learning and innovation across a group of schools here in Dubai. I run the Virtuality Teach website, and I write for VR Focus and a bunch of other cool stuff to do with virtual reality and education. And I've just come off the back of one of the longest weeks of my life, to be honest. I've been at the guest conference here in Dubai, which is the largest education conference in the Middle East. I've been presenting at guest for the last 7 years, but this year they gave me an entire stage to coordinate, a virtual reality stage. So in the last 3 days, I've pretty much not sat down. I delivered 9 presentations, hosted 2 panels, launched new graphics. Sidra's been there with me doing some live tilt brush demos with students. It's been amazing, but it's been absolutely exhausting at the same time. So why not do something else on the day after it finishes? But I was disappointed because I like to try and get one CPD and VR event in every month, and I actually missed February. But then, hey, it's the month with less days. So here we are on March 1st, and this event actually ties in with what we've just been doing with all the tilt brush stuff at Guess, because we hosted a special panel on VR in art education. Now, just before we go on, a little bit of housekeeping. Most of you, I think you're all muted at this point anyway, so I'm going to skip past this slide. But in terms of taking photos inside Engage, we do want you to be taking photos. If you are a previous attendee, you know how to do it. But for those that don't, the easiest way is to pull up your tablet if you're on a headset, which you can do from your left hand. And then the camera tool is highlighted on the slide up here. These guys have shown me how to use the laser pointer. So there you go. You can see it up there. Once you've got your camera out, you can flip it if you want to take selfies. In fact, let me just take a quick selfie with the panel. But the light's not great for me. I'll do that. And then once you've taken your picture, it'll offer you to save that picture. So I click save, and those pictures will be available in the My Documents. You'll find there's an Engage folder inside My Documents on your PC. If you're on a PC, then as it says here, you just press the escape key and it will bring up your menu and you can access the camera from there. But you need to try and line your shot up before you press that, because otherwise you'll find you're kind of fixed in position. But there you go. Please do take as many pictures as you like. And if you're going to share them on social media, please do use the hashtag CPD and VR, continuing professional development in virtual reality. Yeah, that's it. So what I'm going to do, we've got 3 amazing guests, and I've deliberately chosen 3 people with 3 very different roles within VR art and VR art education. And I think they really complement each other really nicely. So I'm just going to introduce each guest and give them a chance to explain a little bit about who they are and what they do. So first up, we've got my colleague Sidra. Sid works with me at Just Dubai. I've known Sid for about 3 or 4 years now. Sid, do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I have been in Dubai for 8 years, yes, about 8 years, and I've been working at Jeff for the entire time, and I have just the last few years I've been really quite interested in what Steve's been doing around the school with just the digital learning, and more recently with VR.
Okay, that's great. Next up, we've got Jesse Damiani. Jesse is editor-at-large from VR Scouts. So, Jesse, do you want to introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your relationship with, particularly with VR and art?
Sure. So I'm an XR, VR AR art curator. I curated an exhibition in Los Angeles called Spatial Reality, which at the time was and maybe still is the sort of largest gathering of VR and AR artists for a month-long exhibition. And then I traveled that to different places, culminating in, I co-curated a show with LACMA in Los Angeles for LA Art Show called Virtual Futures. And so now there's a couple new things on the rise that I'll keep quiet for now, but really interested in how art is being used to kind of connect with people who are otherwise unfamiliar with VR and AR art.
And I just have to say, man, I did mention it on Twitter previously, but when my daughter, who is obsessed with all things Marvel, she's obsessed with Marvel, literally, like, she has a whole collection just of Gamora stuff from Guardians of the Galaxy, but she's obsessed with Avengers. She's only 6, bless her. but she saw that picture and she's like, "It's Thor! It's Thor!" So she thinks I'm doing a panel with Thor. So tomorrow when she asks me, I'm going to tell her that you were talking about how you plan on defeating, how you plan on defeating Thanos in the final
Thanos,
Avengers movie.
Right.
Yeah. And then finally we have Joel Kramer from the Kramer collection and the Kramer family. With his somewhat enormous avatar, Joel, you look like. I mean, if Jesse's Thor, then I think you're maybe you're here as the Hulk. You do look pretty big to me. but Joel, do you want to just explain about your background? Because obviously you're somebody that's grown up around art. It's been sort of infused with your entire life, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. My parents started collecting art when old masters art, I should say, when I was 14 years old, so 94, and the collection has grown into one of the, I would say, more prominent private collections in our genre, and it's about 80 paintings right now. And my role within that is that 2 years ago I decided, I've always been looking like how can we prolong our mission and broaden our mission in sharing that art, and digital, but more specifically now VR, is a fantastic way to do that. So I built a virtual reality museum for that.
Fantastic, and look at the slick transitions here, guys, because that leads us to our first topic. So Sidra and I, at the guest conference this week, we delivered this presentation about virtual reality in art education, and we boiled it down to three key areas and three distinct areas that are different types of applications that we have used ourselves at Jess, and we're going to basically talk about these three topics with our panel here tonight. And the first one is virtual gallery tours, and so it does make some sense to start with you, Joel, since this is your background, this is your specialty. So do you want to just talk to us a little bit about the process, and especially I'm interested in your parents' involvement in this project, because your parents actually appear inside the app, don't they?
Yes, they do. So in terms of the process, we, like I said, my background is Google, so I've always been interested in using technology and digital to share with as many people as we can. The problem or the challenge that I always had was I didn't bring them a significant experience, in my opinion. Right? If I would do an AdWords campaign, I would bring them to our website or our YouTube channel or whatever it might be that we had in digital channels. And they would see a video, or they would see, a high resolution image and some text, which is very, for the people who are interested, is very interesting. But it's not a very engaging, interactive experience. VR completely changes that. And talk about interaction. What we do in the museum itself is we disclose information in a couple of ways. We have text, we have audio, and we have digital holograms. And the first holograms that we got is my parents either welcoming you into the museum and telling you how to basically move around and what you're able to see, and also explain a couple of paintings what it is that you're looking at and why it's important or interesting or fun to look at.
That's great, man. Jesse, I've started to see more and more of this type of thing. There are a wider range of apps appearing on the app stores now, where that allow you to take these virtual tours of galleries. Shepard Fairey's just put out his Damaged tour. Do you think that this is something that we'll see a trend for, that pretty much like every gallery in the world eventually has some virtual reality component or virtual reality equivalent?
Absolutely. I think, one, there's the prospect, sort of as Joel's talking about, of preservation and of like welcoming people into the collection as it exists. And then as it graduates, you could actually start to have whole standalone shows in there. When I demoed the Vario headset, they were talking about working with the, I'm going to get the name wrong, I think it's the Finnish National Museum, to get, perfectly rendered version of that main area. And then for fun, they showed me what an augmentation with a gigantic, true to scale whale would look like. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that that's fine art or anything like that, but imagining, it sort of sends your mind in the direction of imagining, oh, what could a show be where I'm looking at the Mona Lisa and I walk into the world of the Mona Lisa? And so the possibilities are too rich for bringing museums into homes and for it not to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely tend to agree. Now, Sid, I'm just going to point out that I muted you because you've got a bit of background noise going on. So I'm going to mute and unmute you unless you can do it yourself in between discussion. I'm going to unmute you now. From an educator's point of view and somebody who's worked with apps like the Kramer Collection with students, what is it that what benefits does this bring to our students?
Well, I think stars, you think about the fact that if you're sitting in a place where you can't actually go into certain galleries, museums. So, for example, in Dubai, there are galleries, but it's obviously not easy to get to certain locations. So, I think from that point of view, being able to go into a gallery virtually is just fantastic. It's amazing to be able to go in and feel like you're actually in a gallery space. And for young people, I think that's something that's really quite important, is not just for them to be able to view it on a screen, but to actually have pretty close experience of walking through a space and seeing artworks up close.
And I think that's an important point as well, the fact that in an app like the Kramer Collection, and I've been talking about this during the event this week, that the fact that you can get closer to a lot of these paintings into VR than you can in the real world, because you'd probably be tackled by security and dragged out and probably arrested. Can you imagine? Like, I know inside something like the VR Museum of Fine Art, which I'll bring an image of that up on the screen here, you're able to get up so close to the something like the Mona Lisa, and you can see the texture on the canvas. It's amazing. I also think that something like this, I mean, this is a whole other type of gallery experience, isn't it? Because this is the impossible gallery, where you're curating works of art that are in different locations globally. Joel, as somebody, obviously you've worked on bringing together a collection that is as a physical collection, but would you consider doing something like this? Is this something that you can see that the benefits of?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the limiting factors for museums in art is physical space, and or physical space and physical assets. And whether that is the actual painting or the actual sculpture that we're talking about, or it is, the amount of people try and, nowadays shove through the top 10 or 20 museums in the world. You see pictures and you have experiences at the Louvre in Paris for the Mona Lisa. It's not fun anymore. It's not fun to go there because, you'll try and take a picture with 500 other people. And the whole element of enjoying that painting. First of all, you can't get up close anymore because it's too risky. You will be tackled by security guards or a physical barrier that is there. I think so that limiting factor makes it so that many art pieces cannot travel anymore because they're too fragile. Whereas, in VR, anything is possible. Literally anything is possible. Whether, like Jesse said, you can walk into the painting, you can curate them together all over the world. You take away that physicality that limits a lot.
Now, Joel, just while I'm with you, one of the things, guys, that I'm sometimes asked when I host these sessions is, why do you bring developers in? Why do you not just do these events with educators? And personally, I think it's really important that we build these bridges between the education community and the VR development community. I think there's a lot to be gained from building those bridges. Now, Joel, although you're a developer, you have actually got an education program set in place for the Kramer Collection, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. We together with the launch of the actual virtual reality museum, we launched a program called Mighty Masters, and what we aim to do there is it's quite simple in words, which is to bring art in general, starting with our collection, to school kids all over the world. And it is a very simple concept, because now that you have $200 headset or $500 headsets, you're able to get to remote places, like Sidra just said, much more easily, whether you use bicycles or cars or animals to get there. It doesn't really matter. You can literally get to places. Basically, what we like to say is we turn the model upside down, right? Instead of people coming to our physical museum, we bring our collection in a very real and meaningful way to people anywhere.
Well, we got a little video clip of this, so let me just load that up and we'll take a look.
Oh.
Oops. So, Joel, if someone in the audience is working in a school and they wanted to get involved in that Mighty Masters program, can they just reach out to you directly?
Absolutely. It's like I said, it's a quite simple model that we use with massive potential. So, just to give you an example, this was 2 days before the launch of our Action Museum. Primary school in the Bronx, 20 kilometers from some of the most fantastic museums in the world, and they had never ever been to an art museum, just to a natural history or science museum, and that's a shame. That's really a shame. So instead of renting a school bus to bring them to the actual museum, which, by the way, the kids' experience is quite daunting because of the security guards, huge building, etc. You saw like some of the kids, how they react. They think it's a game. They don't think of it as a museum experience, and I think that's important.
Okay, so we're coming on to the second kind of area of discussion, which is this very new concept of using technology like virtual reality to actually step inside works of art. Jesse, you kind of touched on this before. You alluded to stepping inside the world of the Mona Lisa, which is something you can do with ArtPlunge. And the image that I've got up on here, we've got a couple that we've used with our students. One is the Dreams of Dali experience from the Dali Museum, and the other being the Night Cafe, the tribute to Van Gogh. So have you had any experience with this kind of thing, stepping inside recreations of famous works of art?
Sure. Both of these, actually. The Night Cafe was one of the early mobile experiences that I would really champion. I mean, obviously it's not just a mobile experience, but it was something that really kind of blew me away, how good and how, seemingly accurate it was. And I think there's just, in the same way, you brought up Marvel earlier, and like, even carrying aside comedy, one thing we like about Marvel is the interconnectedness, the sort of growing canon of this beast. And it can sometimes go in these weird tangential directions. Other times it can sort of grow in sort of expected directions. But like when you can actually step inside the Night Cafe, which is both Van Gogh and somebody imagining his work and kind of growing that world, it's really exhilarating. And obviously you could do it poorly, but a lot of the people that have done it so far have done it in a really interesting way. In particular, with Dreams of Dali, you're actually traveling around this world, and it's not so much that you're seeing the exact paintings replicated sort of as you are with some of the parts of the Night Cafe. You're actually just inside a reimagined world.
It's like a David Lynch movie. When I went inside Dreams of Dali, the first thing I thought is like, did David Lynch make this? And I think it's important to. Let me just go back one to the Dreams of Dali picture. So for those that don't know, Dreams of Dali was produced by the Dali Museum, so it's officially endorsed, I suppose, officially sanctioned production, and allows you to inside this painting. I cannot remember the name of the painting. I know it's quite a long painting. But it allows you to move around within the experience and view it from different places. It has interactive points and audio. And you're right, it's like being inside a Dali movie. And I think the Dali Museum had said something along the lines of, we honestly believe that if he was alive, he would absolutely have embraced this medium.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting, because one of the common questions I was getting when we were talking about this at the guest conference this week was, well, surely there's a bit of artistic freedom, artistic license being taken here.
Think about covers, like covers that people do of their favorite songs. And the best covers are covers that both honor the original and do something totally different and have a little stamp there. And the covers that can kind of bridge that divide best are the ones we come back to. And so in similar fashion, I think when people are taking these beloved works of art that are 2D and expanding them into a world, be it as sort of a cinematic world that you move within, or a 1-to-1 3D recreation of the painting, there's both that aspect of how do I honor this the right way, true to its vision, and how do I add something a little bit new, because it is a totally new space, like maybe the way that somebody, in this painting, maybe the way that perspective is warped has to involve scale in VR. I mean, that's a really low-hanging fruit example, but I think there's a ton of things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I just add something? I think it's really important, like you said, it was endorsed by the Dali Museum. I think it's really important to get museums on board for this as well. And in my experience, and that might just be my niche or our niche that we're talking to. In my experience, it's been, they're all interested. They have a long way to go in terms of professionalizing and being ready for, taking a massive step like this.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's daunting, isn't it? It's a brave new world for traditional curators. Now, Sid, I'm going to unmute you again, and I am conscious of the fact that you were somewhat limited to jump into the conversation. If you want to just mute and unmute yourself, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it from your tablet.
Right.
It's on the bar where the camera is on the right hand side. It's just because we were getting a bit of feedback from you. But Sid, can you again? Obviously, from the educator's perspective, we've used this exact experience and the Dali one with some of our sixth form art students, BTEC and IB art students. What are the benefits of using, or what are the benefits of being able to step inside a work of art for an art student?
I think for a student, it's the experience of not only seeing the artwork in 2D, but actually walking into a painting and being able to walk around it, walk into different rooms with the night cafe has been fantastic for students, because they're able to see this world in a three-dimensional way. They're able to walk around. They're able to actually physically experience being there, and that keeps them more interested. It gets them excited. From what I've witnessed with kids.
What aspects of the curriculum? It's art history that we're feeding this into, isn't it?
Yeah, art history with IB and our BTEC student, and with GCSE, there's a component where students have to be able to write about contemporary historical artists. So, when they're discussing, a painting, being able to discuss visual elements, how, colours being applied, brush strokes, etc. So when they are inside a painting, walking around it, they will be able to, pick up on brush strokes. They will be able to actually say things out loud while they're in this space and talk about it. And sometimes that's a better starting point for students than going straight into writing.
Definitely. I mean, that's the sort of feedback that we've had from students is that it's so much better. They found it so much more useful to almost look at work from the inside out than look at it on a 2D screen. So, Joel, would you ever consider adding this kind of component into something like the Kramer collection, like so that you can walk around the collection and then you can actually walk into some of the works of art? Or would you feel that since, like, say, like you've got Rembrandts in your collection, haven't you?
Yes. So
would you feel comfortable adding that functionality to a painting by Rembrandt that it happens to be in your collection, or do you feel that would be I don't want to say disrespectful, but do you know what I mean? Like, do you think that that's something that is viable? Let's say.
Well, I think first of all, it's a lot of work to do that, and right now we have 74 paintings in the collection in the museum. Sorry, we have about 80 paintings in the collection. And so you need to be very mindful of, choose wisely which one you want to do that with. I think as a draw, as a draw for the generation in education, I think it's massive. I think it's really fun to do something like that. Particularly, imagine jumping into still life, which becomes huge and immersive, right? That you're on a table and you can just jump around or something like that. What I've heard from, let's say, the purist side, I can't do quotes, but I'm making quotes with my fingers now. From a purist perspective, I'm currently in Berlin, and one of the directors of one of the big museums here told me not too long ago that they're very much into VR. They don't like the element of being able to step into it because it changes the message of the artist. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but it's an interesting point of view. So we are definitely open to that. And it's on the roadmap for a couple of works, but there is so much on the roadmap. There's so much to do.
I bet there is, my man. Which this leads us to a third topic. Just before we go on to talk about creating art and inside virtual reality. Those of you that have been at CPD and VR events before will know that after we wrap up, we tend to do a little bit of an after party, and we do some fun stuff. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to jump into the 360 room, and I've got a couple of 360 film experiences queued up. One of which is inside. Now, Joel and we tested it earlier on. Who was it? Was Monet? I think it was a Monet.
It was the water lilies.
The water lilies on the bridge. So if you are staying around afterwards, you'll be able to, together we'll be able to go through this 360 inside the painting experience of Monet's water lilies. So we come towards the final section, the creating art inside VR, which for me will be the apex, the thing that we're most excited about in terms of what we're able to do in art education. And this photo here comes from the guest conference this week. This is one of our students. She's 15 years old. And this image here is what she created live on stage using Google Tilt Brush. Again, she's 15. And just again for context, she finished her live demonstration. She came to me and she said, "I've got to do my work experience. Do you think HTC Vive will have work experience and then let me go and do Tilt Brush at some of their places where they have the stand set up?" Which I've actually I've started to arrange that for her. I thought that was quite telling, the fact that this is a student.
Can we get in touch with her?
You can indeed. So this is a student who, she's a brilliant student. She's an award-winning filmmaker at 15. She's an actress. She's an artist. She does all this stuff. I just thought it was so telling, the fact that she sees virtual reality artist as a potential future job for herself. And our school's ethos is all about being future ready. If you go on at the Jess Dubai website, you'll see all this stuff about holographic dancers and jobs of the future that we're preparing our kids for. And this girl, she could easily have a career in this. So Jesse, this is something that you've been quite heavily involved with, isn't it? Like you've, as you mentioned at the start, just tell us a little bit more about the spatial reality project.
Sure. So the project itself was originally something that the gallery wanted to do, but they didn't really know where to start. And to make a very long story short, my name ended up in front of them, and we had a really positive conversation. And so what I wanted to do was show the full range of, like, when we say XR, how amazing the work that's already being created is. And it's kind of a special moment because, like, as you referenced, we're still just at the very beginning when people are kind of starting to craft the language around what makes really powerful art. So I wanted to grab everything from projection mapping to augmented reality prints to 3D augmented reality, both in tablet and a headset, to VR as we're used to it, and then site-specific VR, like that, hyper reality as people call it. So I wanted to show that whole range, and hopefully draw in people that normally think of it as something kind of scary and see that, in fact, it's pretty approachable and pretty incredible. And in many ways, virtual reality art, even though it's in a headset, is actually much more organic than a lot of art experiences because it's private.
Go on, Jesse.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
Oh,
was going to throw a video
is...
clip up. Go on.
Let's do it.
No, go on. Honestly, you finish. Sorry.
Oh, the final bit is just people in AR can gather, particularly tablet and phone-based AR, can gather around that experience together. Like, it was really fun watching, like, groups of 5 and 10 people going with a tablet across, a 13-foot long print with 10 AR activations and going through that together, and their reactions and sort of bonding with each other in that moment. It draws them into that piece with a social component that, when it exists in traditional art, is more because people are really passionate about the individual artist, perhaps, or the art.
So I've got, obviously, Jesse, earlier on today, we were chatting, or I think it might have been yesterday for you, but it was first thing this morning for me. We were chatting about various links and which was the Riot video. Right, I'm sure this is the spatial reality one. Is there one that you... They're both they are both the same event. I think the Riot one was the one that I preferred. Did Riot sponsored the event, did they?
Riot was our title sponsor and Meowth was our secondary sponsor, yeah.
There we go, right. Right, let's take a look. He says...
Is that in the video? On a loop?
Try it one more time.
Yeah, it was on a loop.
Bringing together. Maybe I got the link, the URL copied wrong there. Let me try the other one then. Going to drop the volume on this, Jesse. Could I just ask? I take it that the artists who created the physical works of art also created, or were at least involved with the augmentations or the VR components.
Oh yeah, every AR print that you see in there was created by the artist in conjunction with the physical object.
Yeah.
That looks amazing,
doesn't it? Just. What do you think, Sid? Do you think we could do something like that in Dubai?
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. It actually just got me thinking about we've got an IB event coming up next week, and for the opening, I've not actually seen Steve yet, but we're going to have one of our students creating some of her work that she's done. She's created I don't know what app it is that she's used, but she's done this amazing drawing that's also short animation. So what I want her to do is do some live work on the actual ID opening, the event opening, so she'll be doing some of her work within VR for that. But yeah.
Somebody inside my head there for a moment. And Sid, obviously, people like Anna Dreambrush up here. If you've never seen Anna's work, she's definitely someone that you want to check out. She's one of the most prolific virtual reality artists going. She's painted on stage in symphony orchestra. She's painted inside the Louvre, and she's someone that students like the young student I showed you from our school recently, that these are people that she's now aspiring to. And what was brilliant about the conference this week is we shared some of that girl's some flowers artwork on Twitter, and she was getting this authentic feedback on Twitter from people like Anna Dreambrush and Sutu and Sabi Life and some of the sort of big names in the VR art world. And as I mentioned, she seems like she actually sees that as a valid job for her future, to be a VR artist. And so do you think that we will see this become more mainstream in terms in the art world? Joel, is that something that you think we'll see in the future? Like this generation that's growing up, my kids are 6 and 8. They've only, like, VR is normal to them, you know?
Yeah. First of all, I certainly hope so. I think, what I saw from the sunflowers you just showed me, I know Anna, not personally, but from a distance, I think her work is incredible. I think there are a lot of obstacles to overcome, challenges to overcome, like IP, copyright. How do you actually share? How do you own? How do you show? But this is just, this is too cool not to have a future. Like Jesse said, it's incredible. If you see how she creates it, recreates it, that shouldn't just be in a live performance. It should be something that you can enjoy at home as well.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, though, because you're right. She does tend to recreate famous works, and then you do get into potentially issues of copyright. And yeah. I suppose the point is at the moment that she's not selling those pieces. What she is doing right now, though, folks, is if you go on any of her social media channels, she's doing a competition where she's giving away, I think, prints of some of her work. If you retweet a certain tweet, or if you like a certain post on LinkedIn. So if you're connected with Anna, go and check that out. But the other side of the coin, I think, is this. So for those that don't know this guy, this is Jonathan Yeo. He's one of the most famous portrait artists in the world. This guy's painted the Queen and Barack Obama and tons of celebrities. And Yeo, quite famously, last year, possibly the end of 2017, he used tilt brush to create this self-portrait that you can see on the left-hand side. But he then 3D printed it, cast it in bronze, and it was put on display inside the Royal Gallery in London. So, Jesse, do you think that this is something that we'll see probably more established artists adopting this medium, and perhaps that will give it more authenticity within the mainstream art world?
I definitely think that'll happen. We're seeing that with, obviously you mentioned Shepard Fairey. We're seeing that with Marina Abramovic, Laurie Anderson, like a lot of these more classical, not classical artists, but all these more sort of well-known quantities in the art world are making their way over. And I think this example gets at another really important thing, which is that VR is part of a puzzle. I think it'll be hard for somebody to be just a VR artist and to make it. I think the idea is there's a circuit between VR and 3D printing and projection mapping and AR and traditional formats, and kind of swirling those all together in really compelling ways. I think that's how you'll see people make careers with immersive art in the short term.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, go on, Sid. Yeah, I know this is something that you're really interested in.
Yes, and I think for students, we see the works of, for example, Jonathan Yeo. It just makes more sense, the idea that you're creating something in this virtual space, but then it can actually the next kind of piece would be to actually have that printed three-dimensionally in the real world where they can physically touch their artwork. And I think that there are still some things glitches, or maybe just development of actual software and how it could link with 3D. But I think as far as students nowadays and job prospects, I do feel that this is probably the way that it should go. Being a VR artist might not be enough. So to actually be able to physically have your work that you've created in a virtual space, printed three-dimensionally is definitely something that
it's funny though, isn't it? Because I always remember. So at Jess, we were one of the first schools in the world to adopt the iPad in the classroom in 2011, and I always remember one of the first big projects that we started to develop was the use of an app called Book Creator to basically create iBooks with students. And I always remember this example of we delivered training, myself and a colleague of mine called Asa, we delivered a training on how to use this Book Creator app to create these gorgeous interactive iBooks. And then at the end of the session, we said, right, any questions? And a hand came up and I said, yeah, what's the question? And they said, right, how do we print them? And I said, well, you don't print them. If you print them, you lose all the videos and the audio and all the multimedia. That it defeats the point of printing them. But they wanted to be able to print a copy of books. That was the way that they were used to engaging with books. Now, obviously, you flash forward 7-8 years and things have changed. But does
books is an interesting medium because the book we can't seem to get rid of the book entirely. But I do want to quickly point out, because we're sitting here like as panel guests, but the work that you're doing with Jess is truly incredible and inspiring as well. Another thing I think, because you're creating the new generation of artists, of audiences that will enable us to do what we like to do. And another thing is, I think a nice parallel, especially in the creation of the next generation of artists, could be like what happened in the dance and music scene. The access to digital platforms and digital tools has brought an incredible wave of new artists to the entertainment industry. And I'm from Holland, so I think in DJs, but I think we should say across the entertainment industry, film, video, music, everything. And I think in many ways, that's what VR and XR and projection mapping and everything that Jesse does and is passionate about brings that as well. I think we're going to see things that the creators of all these technologies and tools have never thought of in the next 5 to 10 years by very smart kids using these tools in ways that we could have never imagined. And that's really cool.
Could I jump in on that really quick?
Of course you can.
At the show, when kids would go through VR experiences, it was like, here's an example. There's a piece that's in an Oculus Go sitting on those bleachers that you see at the final, pullback shot. And so those are big bleachers. They're like 3 foot by 3 foot. And they would be on that second bleacher. And we're talking, these kids are like, 4 feet tall. They're small. And goes into an Oculus Go, which, as we know, is 3DOF, and immediately jumps up and starts trying to move around in the world without, no flinching, no hesitation, no asking questions, just immediately jumps in.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so telling about the way that Gen Z is going to come in and completely, they haven't been conditioned the way we are with just 2D abstract surfaces. They're used to things being immersive, whether it be immersive in other ways or immersive in digital contexts. And so that's me so exciting as to art careers, art education. They don't have any of the conditioning that we had to treat our media as 2D
limitations,
flat objects. Yeah,
definitely. We've been seeing that this week at the conference, because one of the things that we've been doing loads of these first time ever tilt brush demos for people to come and have a go. And after they've done the inevitable, write their name in Lightning, one of the things I like to get people to do is I load the snowman space and say, right, draw a face on the snowman. And inevitably they draw a face, and then when they move around the side, they realize that the snowman's here and the face is floating in midair over here. But I've found over the years that whenever you ask children to do that, they're a lot quicker to realize, the snowman's over there, so I need to move to it. Yeah. I can't just draw as if it's there. I need to physically move. And I think it's like the Minecraft and all of the 3D content that they've been
even just working with these controllers, like you can imagine my audience when launching this was like 60 and up, and they got it, and we worked a lot on the UX and UI, and they understood it, but there was some explaining to do. Kids, you want to explain something and they just walk away with it. They just do it.
Yeah. Sorry, Joe, can I?
Hello?
Gone silent.
Oh, there you go.
Hello? Hi.
Yeah, we can hear you again now, Sid. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how much you heard there, but I've just seen students working with materials, physical materials, whether it's acrylic paints, charcoal, whatever. You give them materials, they're not always confident because they're afraid of making mistakes. But what I have found over the last few years, and certainly with working with Steve, is when you're working on this kind of platform, they're not as afraid because they know that they can, at a click of a button, they can make it disappear and start all over again. So they're more confident and less afraid of making
to break
mistakes.
Things.
Yes, and that's the area that I'm really interested in, is looking at, why is that, and why can't we have them working within these, using different technologies? We need to, embrace it and get them working with it more because they are so comfortable, in using different technologies. So it should be another medium, just like acrylic or, oil paints or working with clay or whatever.
And it's just going to be normal for them. As Jesse was saying, this generation, they're growing up with this technology. And it's important that schools are taking the steps now to upskill teachers and help them understand this technology that is seeping into these kids' lives already, and they're going to grow up with it and just be so fluent with it.
Yeah.
And spatial computing just changes everything. It's changing the way that we're going to engage with all forms of media. And these kids are going to lead the way.
Yeah, just from the experiences that I've had with students working on Tilt Brush, you put them on and they're learning, they instantly know how to kind of move around and use the different tools. They're so much more confident with that than it's the same students that are maybe not as confident with working with actual physical materials. And it's fascinating to see that.
I mean, we should point out that girl who painted the sunflowers, she's maybe used Tilt Brush 6-7 times ever.
Really? Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. I'll tell you what was interesting though. It was this time round, this kind of, because we did a lot of stuff at a TEDx event last year with some students, but this was the first group of students for the guest event this week where we brought in the reference images. So inside the virtual space, they had either taken photos of their own work or they got reference images online, and they had dotted the area around with these reference images. And we did find that made a huge difference to the confidence and the what's the word I'm looking for? Their ability to create more detailed and more precise art, I think.
Yeah, I think it's about you've got all these tools. You need something. What was beneficial about those reference images, bringing their own work in, was they were actually able to see their work in this three-dimensional space and have something to actually look at, which is how they would actually be working in the real world as well. So I think it is important to have that context. And
also to resize it as well. You can take this sketch that they've done on a piece of A4 paper and essentially make it the size of a room and have it sitting there, and then use that as reference to creating 3D. I think it's really powerful.
And they're not drawing from memory, which is what they were probably doing before. So by having the reference, they're no longer just relying on their memory. Well, that's what that was what my drawing was. It was of a skeleton or whatever it is that they were drawing. They actually had references, and that's how an artist would actually develop and go through the process of developing their own work in the real world. So I think it needs to be the same in VR as well.
Definitely. Right, guys. One thing I will say, I know from my point of view, I can hear that there's been some issues with Sid's sound. Now, I don't know if you guys have had any issues with mine, but there's a pretty horrific sandstorm going on here in Dubai today. I literally, through the side of my headphones, all I can hear is the whistling at my windows of the wind beating against. And I just know my car's going to be buried in sand tomorrow morning. But so I do apologise if you've had any issues hearing anything that we've been saying. But please just to connect with the panel on social media. That's all their Twitter handles up on the screen up there. If you're sharing any content, please do add on the CPD and VR hashtag.